And so now, guys, as we move on, before we get to recapping the conference semifinals and previewing the conference finals, there's one other NBA topic that we need to get to, and that is the Hawks won the NBA draft lottery for the first time on Mother's Day. You might have missed it because it was on Mother's Day in the middle of the day. Anyways, the Hawks won the NBA draft lottery for the first time ever. And I saw some pessimistic Hawks fans on X. They are the Shaun Holkos of Hawks fans. And they were saying, of course, the first time we win the first pick, it's in this draft with this class, where the 2024 class is being compared to 2013 when Anthony Bennett first overall. So I'm admittedly a big-time casual when it comes to men's college basketball from this past NBA season. I look at some of the names in the lottery for these mock drafts, and I'm like, all right, I've heard of some of these names, but I can't really tell you much about a lot of them. But anyways, Kevin, I'm going to toss this to you first. What was your reaction when you saw that the Hawks won the draft lottery and moved all the way up, while the Pistons, who had the worst record in the NBA for the second year in a row, ended up with the fourth pick? And then now the Hawks have the number one overall pick in a draft where it's a bunch of, no offense, nobodies. Even Blue agrees.
It's really interesting to see that they won it. There's been so much turmoil this past year and a half. They got rid of their other coach. They brought in Quinn Snyder mid-year. To be an NBA coach and get brought on mid-year says a lot of what they thought the current situation was. So to see them win the number one pick, now you're seeing questions. Are they going to trade Trae Young? Are they going to trade DeJounte Murray? What are they going to do? This number one pick, Toddy and I have been going back and forth for probably about 2 months, and we can't come up with there's not a solid number one pick in this draft, in any mock draft. You can show me 100 mock drafts, and they're all going to have a different 14, different 32. Because like Shaun said, this draft is, unfortunately, Anthony Bennett 2.0. I don't think it's that bad, but it definitely has the potential to be bad. So I think there's a lot of potential in this, but, the Hawks are going to have to do what they do, and I really hope they don't move Trae Young, because that will just set them back even further and make them regret trading him for Luka.
Toddy, you may not be balking like Shaq when it comes to the Atlanta Hawks going, come on. However, you have been pretty chilly for quite some time, dating back to the Shaun and Vaughn days. And so how do you see this shaking out for the Atlanta Hawks, Jaevon? Does this signify the end of the Trae Young era and or DeJounte Murray? Or do the Hawks draft best player available and run it back with those two guys and have Trae be your franchise player for the next decade?
It's kind of odd because, like you guys already mentioned, this draft isn't, just an embarrassment of riches in the top three. A lot of people like to cut it off, say it's a 3-player draft, it's a 2-player draft. There's not that many guys. I even once saw a scout report. I forget where the report actually was. They're comparing the number. If you were to draft somebody with the number one overall pick, it would be like drafting Tobias Harris number one overall. And that is insane on how crazy that would look. I think this draft, I've been looking at a couple of guys, here and there. Kevin showed me Rasher, Zachariah Rasher. I like him. I think he's a 6'10". I think he's 6'10". He's 19. I think he's another French guy.
He is.
And a lot of people have had him use. I've consistently seen him in the top 3, but he's a guy that can go number one. Alex Sarr is a guy I've consistently seen at number one. After the NCAA tournament, people had Donovan Clingan as number one. There's just a bunch of guys. Like, I've seen Cody Williams be a guy that's projected to go number one. Now, that may have been before the season, but he's more of a guy that's probably going to be later in the lottery. So there's just a bunch of guys that could go number one overall. I've seen at least 6 or 7 different guys that have been projected to go number one overall. So that's how, wishy-washy I'd say the draft is. As far as the Hawks go, I think they blow it up. I think it's just time for a fresh start for Trae. to kind of go. He's done pretty much all he could. I mean, he's multiple time All-Star, All NBA, been to the conference finals, literally a couple of games away from the finals if he probably doesn't get hurt. Hawks probably end up beating the Bucks. I think that was 2021, I want to say that was. So, and then they try to, pair him with DeJounte Murray, and that really doesn't work out. It's pretty redundant on those guys playing with the ball in their hands. So you're kind of looking at it from try to get a shit ton of draft picks for next year, because I believe next year's draft is going to be one of the better drafts we've seen in quite some time. And try to you could trade Trae Young perhaps to the Spurs and get the picks back that you traded the Spurs. I think it was a few years ago when they got DeJounte Murray. And so you recuperate those picks back, and you could trade DeJounte Murray and try to get some picks. I would wonder how much you would get for DeJounte Murray. You trade those guys away. Maybe you're drafting number 1 overall. You trade the number 1 overall pick this year to a shit team like, I don't know, DC for next year's pick, and you hope that DC is terrible, kind of like what the Bears did when they traded with the Panthers. They gave them DJ Moore, and they traded for their next year's pick, and a bunch. I think it was a couple of second rounders, third rounders, whatever the rest of that trade was. But and then they kind of foreshadowed saying that, hey, you guys probably aren't going to be that good next year. They fleeced them and, kind of hold it out for a year because they won 7 games last year, the Bears. And, Bryce Young, was what he was last year, and they ended up getting the number 1 overall pick. So does DC say yes to a trade like that? Maybe they'll be like, not so fast. And they'll be like, I know what you're trying to pull a fast one on me. But I think Atlanta ends up blowing it up because I don't know how good they thought they would have been if both guys were healthy, because Trae Young was obviously hurt towards the end of the year. Last year they got bounced from the playoffs. I believe in six games in the first round. I think the year before that they made like the play-in and lost. And the year before that they made the Eastern Conference Finals. So their window is closed, I think, and they're trying to chase what it once was, and I think it's just time for them to blow it up and kind of just build around Jalen Johnson. I think Jalen Johnson has a lot of promise. Kev's guy, Duke boy, but he's shown a lot of promise. He's young, been in and out of the lineup due to injury, but I think you kind of just got to load up on picks and try to load up for next year's draft. Get as much picks as you can so they can have an army of picks and maybe try to move up into next year's draft, maybe into the top 5. I feel like there's a guy that could be a cornerstone piece for them in next year's draft. This year's draft, I'm not sure. But perhaps it could be a stepping stone for them with this number 1 overall pick.
Kevin, the Sacramento Kings have pick number 13, given the fact that they were in the lottery this year after getting eliminated in the play-in. Are there any guys that you're eyeing potentially for the Kings at 13, Kevin? Because obviously the names like Alex Sarr, Donovan Clingan, Rob Dillingham, the Kentucky guys, as Toddy mentioned, Zachariah Rasher. I'm sorry, I butchered his name. Ron Holland, all of those guys, they're going to be likely gone by 13. But, Kevin, is there someone that you're targeting for the Sacramento Kings at 13?
Cody.
If Cody Williams drops to 13, we got to go get Cody Williams. I'm a huge Cody Williams fan. I am a huge Jacoby Walker fan. I think we just really need to bring in more length.
Jacoby Walters,
excuse me. You hear Coach Mike coming in after the podium saying, I wish you always talking about how much of the depth and length the other team had on the opposing side. So for us to bring in a talent like that, 6'5", 6'6", you can shoot the 3 ball, put the ball on the ground. That those two kind of players light up when I see it. I wouldn't be mad if Mr. Ron Holland found down. If Ron Holland felt it was, I think we go get him as well. I'm definitely not in the camp of us drafting a big man. No
Filipowski.
No, Filipowski. We've seen.
Have some faith in your boy.
Shaun tells me all the time. Every time I bring up another big man, he says, "Kevin, what happened to Indiana?" You know, we saw him. We saw Sabonis and Miles Turner butt heads every game. They both really couldn't elevate, and then once they both separate, they both elevate. Sabonis elevates the All-NBA All-Star. Miles Turner ups his averages and his blocks, his rebounds. So they just goes to show that they couldn't play together. So are we really gonna try that 2.0? Are we gonna bring another non-shooter on the court when we already have Sabonis? So I would really love for us to go get a guard here, but if we're grabbing a guard, that most likely means Malik Monk is leaving. So if we can keep both, if we can keep Malik Monk and bring another guard in, I'm all in for trading Kevin Huerter.
Why not a Dalton Connect? I like him. He could be good for you guys. Go ahead, Shaun. Oh, I was gonna say, Dalton Connect out of Tennessee. I think he's like 6'8", 6'9", scorer, lefty. 6'6", my bad. He's 22, so that might. A lot of people are like, "Hey, he's a little older." But what's wrong with older? We've seen older guys kind of come into the league and just be more polished, more established, not as raw. Can shoot the ball fairly well. He'd be a guy for you, essentially like a Kevin Huerter, but just younger. Kevin Huerter's 6'6", right? Yeah, he's like around the same 6'6", 6'7".
Yeah.
So, I think Dalton Connect would be solid for you guys, but I kind of agree with Kevin. Cody Williams would be pretty solid for you. At one point in time, he was mocked at number 1 to go in this draft. So, if he's able,
he still could. He still could. He very well could.
If he slips to 13, that'd be really solid for you guys. 6'10", can score, put the ball on the floor. I kind of go back and forth with Kevin. If you guys were to draft Cody Williams, would he be a guy that would start for you guys? And he's like, I don't know if he starts, maybe he comes off the bench. And I was like, why not? Why wouldn't you start? You could start him. Will you be what? It'd be Fox. Give me your 5, Shaun. You gotta give me your 5 with a Cody Williams on your team.
You probably just have him replace Harrison Barnes, like you were saying, and so
put him at the 3.
You put him at the 3. Keegan's already been playing the 4 for a while because of Barnes. The 2 spot is the biggest question mark at this point because Fox is going to be there at the 1. Sabonis is there at the 5. Keegan go back and forth between the 3 and the 4. And like I said, the 2 is the biggest question mark because Kevin Huerter still around, probably won't be back. Malik Monk, he's going to get paid. And as much as I want to see Malik Monk come back, he probably will be gone because he deserves to go get that bag. Jaevon, you and I were talking years ago when you were telling me Malik Monk is a monster. And I'm like, the guy can barely even make the Hornets roster, but it's because they weren't using him right. And then he goes to L.A., he does better. And then he goes to Sacramento and he absolutely takes off.
Oops.
And so, as much as it would pain me to lose Malik Monk, I think that he ultimately goes and he leaves, and I wouldn't be upset about it because he deserves every single penny that he can get. So that really leads to the question mark at the 2. But to answer your question, if Huerter or Monk are back, then you could have Williams go in there at the 3. And for those who don't know, Cody Williams is the younger brother of Jalen Williams.
J-Dub.
J-Dub. Not J-Will, but J-Dub. And so that is important to note. And the names that I heard you and Kevin mainly talk about, Toddy, were Cody Williams and also you got Jacoby Walter, who is from Baylor.
He's a hooper, and he's a freshman too.
The thing that I like about hearing both of those names is that right now I'm looking at a mock draft from USA Today Sports, and they have Jacoby Walter going 20, and they have Cody Williams going 14. So both guys would be available for the Kings to pick at 13. So I like that. I'll throw one more name out there. Probably not the best fit, but, hometown love. Jared McCain, man. Jared McCain. Kevin, you're shaking your head. Why are you shaking your head?
There's a mock of him going to the Kings, too. I saw that earlier.
Yeah, nah, man. We're good, man. I'm the first dude to pump up the 916er, but we just don't need another small guard. We tried that with Jaevon. We've seen his struggles. I just feel like it would be a wrong decision.
Cam don't want to draft nobody from Duke.
That's not true. I mean, it's just not a good situation for them. Do I want them to get drafted? Of course, but it's just not a good situation for them or the team. We bring in Jared McCain. We have another small guard, and he's going to struggle on guarding NBA bigs or NBA big guards, NBA twos. He's a tweener, so that's really not going to help. But I'm all in for a Sacramento guy getting drafted. I just believe bringing him to Sacramento wouldn't be the right place for him in his career. I really want him to go to OKC because that's what they need is just another spot-up shooter.
I can't wait.
I mean, Josh Giddey is on the trade block. He is on his way out of Oklahoma City. And so maybe, Sam Presti, he's got all those assets. Maybe he finds a way to – I mean, for a Jared McCain, you probably just need a top 20 pick. And so Sam Presti, he could get himself in there if he really wanted to.